Hello, welcome to Watercolor. This is a brand new series. We are turning the reins over to Jill. She's been a long-time attendee here at the library, friends with the director. We're going to let her instruct us and take us through all the things that she knows over the next months. And we're excited to have her be a part of the library and working with this class. So I'm so excited. So I'm going to turn the time over to her now. And I'm going to let her introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. My name's Jill Durmeyer. I am retired from USAA, and that's kind of when I started watercolor painting. I started taking lessons at Hobby Lobby with an artist there, and have gone to a few different workshops with different artists to learn different techniques and things like that. Obviously spent a lot of painting time with Debbie here, learning more things from her, so that's always fun. I guess I would describe my painting style as more very specific, not loose at all, which I always try to paint looser and I never get there because I'm very tight with my painting. So it's just a work in progress for me still to this day. But anyway, you all got the picture from Debbie. So let's go ahead and take a look at it, and I'll kind of walk you through what I did on my first one.
There on this video, stop video, you're going to arrow up. And then go to the camera, the IPV. Oh, and then there you go. Yay.
Okay. So I painted this one last week, and there's a few things about it that I'm not real excited about. If you kind of looked at the picture, it doesn't exactly look like that. So one thing I'm going to do different today is this area up here is very light. And if you look at the picture, it's a lot darker than that.
Jill, you're going to have to show them the picture because they didn't get the picture.
Oh, okay. Here's the picture we're working from. So see the difference between kind of between the two. And what I didn't like was this is so light. I liked this that it is not white like the mountain. So that's why I make that a little pink like this. I'm okay with this a medium color. This here, today I'm going to make a little lighter because it's further in the background. And then what I found out when I was painting it the first time is I had these flowers up front, very light, and I had to go redo them because when they dried, they faded out a little bit. So that's kind of what we're going to work on today. I'm gonna just put this picture aside. I hope you all have drawn. Get this very dark. So let me, well, if you've all drawn it, you kind of know where the sky is and the mountain is on yours. You can lightly see it on here. I don't know if it helps any to zoom in a little. You can see it a little bit there, but anyway. So what I'm going to do is turn my picture upside down, and we're going to start with the sky. And how we're going to paint that is we're going to do wet on wet. So what I need everybody to do is take clear water and wet your whole sky, not the mountain and not the ground, just the sky part. Get it real wet so it doesn't dry out.
Already messed up. I cut my paper apart. I wasn't supposed to.
You can use as big a brush as you have to do this sky part. It doesn't have to be around. If you've got a bigger brush that you want to use, it's easier to get more water on when you have a bigger brush. So as big as you've got to get your sky wet is always good. And then what I'm going to do is right here along my mountain, I'm going to take a pinky color, kind of a light, pale pinky, maybe put a little blue in it to get it a little purpley. But again, very watery here because I'm going to make it light, but different enough that it's not white like the mountain.
If you've started painting, you can't see it. You need to push.
Yeah, I was about to ask that same question. And so basically you're doing the sky upside down right now?
I am doing the sky upside down because I'm letting this pink run down.
Yes.
And this blue I'm going to get darker. So as I go and put in a little purple, that's going to start running down into my blue. You can take that ultramarine blue. And this is where I didn't get it dark enough in my first picture. So I'm going to continue to make this sky a little darker here once it gets past the pink close to the ground. So a little more pigment in there so it stays darker. Maybe a little less water down here. Just making my sky across. And if you tip it a little, it'll run down into the blue. So it'll make it look like a smoother sky picture colors and not stripy or streaky. So I'm just going to kind of hold it up a little and let it run. You can let it run the other direction too. So they mix up, the paints mix up together a little bit. I might put a little more blue in there just because it looks like I have a line. So I might change that up a little so it mixes a little. And then again, run it down, tip your paper, let it run. You can kind of see these right here. It's running down into the blue a little bit. That's okay. You can tip it sideways if you want, just to kind of mix it all up. It looks like it's still kind of light. So while it's still a little wet, I'm going to get some more of my blue up here, put a little more pigment in it, and make it darker. Because again, when it dries, it's going to dry lighter, and I want it darker. I'm going to hold it up and let it run a little bit. You can kind of see it running down. You can run up this way a little bit, to your side a little bit. And hopefully that'll get to the color I'm looking for. So what we can do is we can turn it around now, let it dry for a while, see how it's going to dry. And what I'm going to work on next is this landline right here. It's not the dark purple one, not this dark purple one, but this one here that's got the gold and the green. That's a little hillside further back, but it's supposed to mimic and look like these flowers, but on another hill that's further away. So we're going to do that particular line. Since it is in the distance a little, we have a yellow ochre and a brighter green. I'm going to use those two colors in that field, that hillside. So I'm going to take just plain water again in that hillside, that one strip. And this is going to be my distant hill of flowers. And I am going to just put some water in there, just so those colors run together a little, because again, it's in the distance, not up close. It's going to be a little lighter. So I'm going to start at the top with my yellow ochre. It's going to run down a little bit because it's pretty wet. That's all right. And then what I'm going to do is get probably, you might have like a brighter green in your palette because it's in the distance. That can be that would probably work well. A little lighter color. And just mix that in. Go up into the ochre a little bit, you can do that. It's okay if you go over the line a little bit, nothing wrong with that. But this is our further in the distance hillside of flowers. So I've got my sky drying. Now I've got my one hillside drying, and I'm not going to paint in between just so that my colors don't run together. And what we can start on now is you can change your brush to probably a little smaller brush. So the size on that I have here is a 10. Looks like or an 8, that would work as well too. But we're going to start on our more specific flowers here. I don't know if you can see mine. Let's see if you can. If you traced some of those, some of them are like the daisy sunflower looking ones, like the yellow ones. And then you've got some of these blue, like over here, more columbine looking flowers. I think we could start with the yellow daisy ones. And I'm going to start with a yellow this time because these flowers are up close to me. So I'm going to take my smaller brush. Again, when I did the first painting, I didn't do that yellow very strong. So I'm going to try and get a little more pigment on it this time. And it doesn't have to be real exact because you're going to be filling in all the other greenery around it. But I'm going to try and make these guys a little brighter. I'm going to do some of my sunflowery looking things. They're still kind of wet. And then what you can do is you can take like a burnt sienna. So it's kind of a reddish brown color. You'll see on this picture, more of a reddish brown kind of here. You can take that color and work it in to the center. It might run out a little bit into the flower part, that's okay. I might take a little of that yellow ochre because it's not as bright yellow. Put some of that in the middle. So see how it gets the center of the sunflower a little different color. I'm going to continue with my other sunflowers. This is my attempt at painting looser. Not being so specific and doing every petal exact. I don't know how successful I am at that, but
Office thing is at 2:30.
Here's one down here. It's kind of facing a different direction, so the petals on this side are longer than they are on this back side here. Again, you can take maybe a little yellow ochre and drop in even on some of these petals, see how that runs together. Gives it a little more texture, shape. Here's another one. This one's a little further back, and I guess I'm getting this one a little more yellow ochre than I am bright yellow, but that's okay too. Maybe a little more yellow on the next one. Bright yellow because he's closer up front to me. More bright yellow again. And then again in the middle, this burnt sienna. Maybe a little darker pigment there, like this one. See if it runs around a little bit, runs into the flower possibly. Now you'll see my two first flowers I did over here. See how it's running? I'm okay with that, that's okay. I'm probably going to go to put a little more of the darker in the center here, just so that stands out a little differently. I'm going to let the yellow ochre and the yellow, bright yellow kind of blend together on that side. That's perfectly fine with me. This little flower over here is totally facing away. So what we see is the yellow leaves or the yellow petals of the sunflower. And this portion right here is actually the green stem and the bottom of the plant coming up. So I'm going to take, this palette has a couple shades of green in it. It's got like a blue green and then a bright yellow green. I'm kind of mixing them together in here just to give me kind of a not too bright, not too dark, maybe just more of a greeny green. So if you have a green in your palette, you could use that. And I'm going to drop that in here. And I'm just going to make his stem. And here's a stem going down behind one of the blue flowers. Here's the stem from this sunflower. Here's a stem from that sunflower. Here's a stem from that sunflower. One from this one. And a little bit of a stem back there. And we're going to be filling in a lot of green here. Leaves and other flowers and blues and stuff like that too. So don't worry too much about it right now. Now we're going to start on these blue, I call them columbine looking flowers, more like these. They're kind of, oh, I forgot my little sunflower back there. I'm going to get him. He's looking up to the sky behind, peeking out from behind this other one. Then I'm going to work on some of these bigger blue ones that are up close to my face. So they're going to be a darker pigment again too, not too watery. As we go back to our yellow line back here, we're going to get more watery as we go back. But these flowers that are up close to me, I'm going to try and get a little more pigment in them. So just kind of make little shapes, however you want them to look. Try and keep these up close, really dark. A little bigger, since they're closer, they're probably a little larger. Water in that. And then I'm going to take one of my greens. Oh, I got to do my yellow stem back here. But I'm going to make the stems for my blue columbine kind of flowers. I'm going to maybe make those the brightest green I have. So that is this yellowy bright green here. I'm going to make it a little different than the stems for the sunflowers, just to give it a little variation and make them straighter stalks. So now I've got my closest flowers brightened up a little for me. What I'm going to do now is probably the best, most fun. I'm going to dot, let's see if I can get this. Start up here and just do kind of leaves underneath, around. I'm starting with my light green. We'll come back with darker green. We'll pretty much have most of this all filled up with color. Do a little more light green. Again, maybe keep it a little darker pigment up front. You'll see my yellow flowers, at least they're staying brighter, but look at my green here. Got a little watery, got pretty washed out. We'll go back in and fix that. That's not a problem. Again, brighter colors up front, darker, heavier pigment up front. Let's see, we can go in with some more of our yellow and do yellows in there. Doesn't matter if they overlap, mix in a little bit. That's all fine. Can go up. We're going to go up into this field eventually, but I'm just starting down in front with the heavier pigment and the brighter colors. You'll see how they're mixing up kind of some here. That's all right. Any questions, anybody? Or comments?
So Jill, pick a good spot to pause
Yes.
and let everybody catch up.
Okay.
Can you?
Do we want to pause
recording?
now? We could
Yeah.
pause now, sure. Okay, we'll continue with some more of our flowers and grasses down here towards the bottom. Again, I'm using probably a size 8 or 10 brush. We did the bright yellows and bright greens. What I'd like to do now is to go in with a darker green and probably that yellow ochre color. So for the darker green, I'm mixing what I've got as a fairly bright green in my palette, but I have a black that I can mix with it that makes it a darker, shadowier color. That's kind of olivey. Looks pretty black on the screen. It's not quite that black in my dish. But I'm going to add probably a little more bright green to it. Get it a little brighter so it's not too dark. Might have gotten a little too much black in there, but this is a little bit better. So I'm going to start pointing in, like maybe pretending I'm underneath some of these, just going around them, kind of randomly. Behind them, under them. Down in front here. A little underneath these. They could look like stems, leaves. Make them look any way you want. Water in my thing here. Maybe a little more washed out, possibly. Gets a little lighter then. As I get a little further away, maybe a little lighter. A little more water so that it's a little more watery. I can start moving up into my further away fields. I have to still add some more blues back in there. Don't let me forget to do that. And I'll be putting some more greens and yellows, lighter green and lighter yellows back here too. But as long as I've got the dark on my brush, I'm just gonna kind of fill in some of this. If you hold it up higher, it's smaller little points. If you hold it more towards the side, it's more like little blotches. I guess it's kind of whatever you prefer to do. This green that I just picked up is called more of a bluish green. It's not with the black, the other one got kind of olivey. I'm going to put some of that up here because it's a brighter color. And again, I'm up front. So I might do some of that just in this front part here, not back in this background. That's going to be, that'll have to be more watery back there. But since this is a brighter green, it probably works a little better to use it up front. And again, this is called blue green. You can kind of see the color there. You might have something fairly similar. It looks a little dark in here. It's not quite that dark, but you might have something similar in whatever your palette is. But it brightens it up quite a bit up in the front. I like that. You can just go over any of your other colors. Looks like I even went over some of my flowers. That's all right. I might take this brighter green and get it much more watery than it was, because I could put some of that color even back here in the background, let it run around a little bit. But if I make it more watery, it'll start looking like it's in the distance and not up right close personal to me. Kind of like that. Again, looking at my back hill back here, to me that's way, way too light. So I'm gonna fix that in a little bit, but I'll show you how to do that because I don't like that personally. There's still some white showing through, and at the end of the day, there's still going to be white showing through. It's kind of like when sunlight is shining on a field, it looks like parts of it are almost white. I'm going to change colors from that greeny color, and I'm going to go back into that yellow ochre color. So it's like a more of a tan, beigey color. And I'm going to start adding some of that down in the front here. Just painting over some of my other colors, just to give it a little variation. Heavier pigment down here in the front. I got a little too heavy there. Take your little, if you think it's too much, like too blotchy, you can always take your paper towel and dab it up. Kind of take some of that starkness away from it. Maybe get a little more watery now because I'm starting to go back a little from my field up front, my up front field. Let's see. I think I'm gonna move on to like up here in this part. I don't have much blue. It looks like in the original one I did, I had quite a bit more blue blotches underneath. So I'm gonna add a couple more of those in. So that's back to the ultramarine blue. And again, if you're up front on this bottom part of our picture here, maybe a little darker pigment. And then as we go back, a little lighter, more watery. But you can put some of that in. mixes in sometimes. That's okay. Can look like a shadow underneath. As I go back from there, I'm probably putting a little more water in my in with the pigment so that it see how this looks. That's still kind of dark because I want to move back here where it's fainter and further away from me. So still might water it down a little bit more. That's a little waterier, more watery, waterier, more watery. So I'm going to use that as I go back a little. You can kind of see it blending in a little with the other colors, kind of wandering into the other colors. That's okay. We have to come back in this background here with the yellow yet, the bright yellow too. So we'll get there. I can wash it out a little if I want. This might be a little much down here, so I'm just going to dab those. They're still wet. So if I just take my brush and go over them again, it's going to make it run a little bit, which is okay. But that might keep some of it from looking too stark or too much like a dot, like these people over here. So let's see, I've got my brighter flowers up front, my field in the middle here has to be a little more yellows in it, I believe. So I'm going to start adding a little more, and it's getting kind of monochromatic hue-wise here. So I'm going to give it a little different color. Got quite a bit of green on that yet. Go to my other water, my cleaner water. Get a little more yellow in there. And try and get that in the white space in between so that it just doesn't look like a bright green, but it looks more yellow. Get that in my white spaces back there. I think that's looking a little better. It's not quite so pale. It's got a little brighter hue to it. I think that looks a little better. Because otherwise it was just getting too, it went from bright from here down to just kind of blah, right in the middle. I think if I brighten it up like this, it'll make it look a little better. Okay, how we all doing?
Pretty good.
Getting our fields done. It's kind of good to look at my picture from on the screen. What you can do is if you're at your house and you're not sure how your picture's looking, if you take it and prop it across the room, like on a table or something, or on the floor, and step back 10 feet and look at it, you can kind of see what you like or don't like about the colors. So in my picture, I like how these are dark. I like how this moves into that, but I don't like this. To me, this whole area here just kind of is one thing, one color. So I'm going to go back into this area and I'm going to put a little more green down here and change some of the hue a little bit so it's not just all light, so that it's a little more varied, kind of like I did in this field part here. I might even take a couple, well, let's start with that. So I'm going to go to my brighter green and have a little more pigment in it. And I think I'm going to just kind of do this. Kind of scary, but that's okay. It'll all work out. A little more water in it. Looks a little bright. Might have to soak some of that up. Then I'm going to take, since I did this in that yellow ochre, I'm going to take my brighter yellow, get it pretty watery. And I'm just going to go right over that. Let it run into my green. So some of the yellow ochre kind of comes through yet. I might dab a little of that in there in a minute. But I'm doing my brightest yellow here just to brighten up my field back there a little bit. Yep. Maybe run it. If I tip my paper, it runs down into a little bit. So see how this is coming down? That's not so bad. That yellow ochre color, that kind of goldy yellow or tannish yellow, I'm going to take just a few drops of that and drop in. And just let it run around a little. It gives that hillside a little texture. And again, if you tip, let it run, tip, let it run. It gives it a little more variance back there. How's everybody doing?
Okay.
Okay. I might take a little more of my aquamarine. See how as this is drying, those blues kind of faded out quite a bit. I'm going to go back with my ultramarine blue, and I'm going to make a few more that are a little darker. So I'm going to go like where I had blue before, but I'm going to redo it just to make it a little bit darker in here. Gives it a little more variation again. That might be a little bright, but I think it needs to be just a little darker some places. If I hit it again with the brush, it lightens it up and go up into the green a little. I like that variation a little more. And then I think what I might do is just where I have yellows back here, the brighter yellows, I'm going to go hit them again with brighter yellow. Again, as it was drying, it was fading out more than I expected. So I'm just going to revitalize some of those colors a little. Like I kind of dark up there. So here comes my little dab dab. My hillside back here, my green, is still awfully, awfully green. So I might actually just take real watery black and just do a couple drops in there, like I did with the yellow ochre. Because my green is still wet, so it's just running around in there a little bit. Tip it, let it fade, let it run, see if it runs somewhere. It's kind of running. I'm going to run it back down towards the edge a little bit. So it gives a little more depth to that particular hillside. Now I'm going to have to let that dry a little because I kind of messed with it. So maybe we'll pause the recording for a few minutes again, make sure everybody's caught up. I'm going to drop some more color in there, some more pigment. Again, these are hillsides, so if they're a little jagged, that's fine. You know, maybe I want to make my mountain go up a little higher up there on that side. Fill in some more of my pigment, do it again. I can always go back and paint over what I've painted. It'll make it darker, so as it dries, it's gonna be, this is a pretty thin little line once I get up here. But I can go drop some more of that purple in and let it run a little. I think I'm gonna tip it up because it looks like my paper's kind of wavy here and that dark spot went up. So I'm gonna let this dark spot run down. Let it come down to here so that it doesn't look like it's all one. And then you can kind of see over here where my purple ran into my yellow ochre, made it kind of a brown. That's all right too. I'm gonna put maybe a little more purple there, and it's running down into my other hillside. I'm gonna be okay with that. I'm just gonna let that go. Maybe dab that one up on the end. I can also tip it that way. I can tip it sideways so it runs a little more sideways and not to the top sky or to the flowers. And then what I'm probably gonna do is this, where I have my purpley blue, I'm gonna put a little more blue in that. I'm gonna mix it over here, I think. Make it a little grayer, put a lot more water in it. Maybe just a titch of black. And I'm gonna see if it's watery enough because I'm going to do a little bit in the mountain here to make these lines so that you see crevices in the mountain. So I'm gonna make it a little bit darker grayish. Might be a little heavy on the pigment, although this dries pretty light. So I'm gonna put just a tad more water in it. And then don't make it too full. Don't get your brush too full. So dab some of that off. You can dab it off on your paper towel if you want. But I'm gonna take these lines and I'm gonna use the tip of my brush. And I'm just going to draw these lines up. And they're pretty faint, but it's like the crevices going up the mountain. There's one over there. You can make it wider at some points. You can break it. Do that. One part way up there. One towards the top. That looks kind of like a dashed line. So that looks kind of goofy when I'm looking at it up close. It doesn't look so bad from a distance, but up close it looks kind of goofy. So I'm gonna make maybe a little darker, wider crevice there. I see some of my purple running into it here. I think that's okay. I might dab that up just so it's not so dark. Because I don't want my mountain dark. I want my mountain light, because Mountain Hood is a very light mountain. It's white like that a lot, all the way down. I mean, it's like when you look at it, one of my friends took a picture of it from out of an airplane window down onto it, and it's almost like a perfectly white cone coming up. So it's an interesting looking mountain. When I'm looking at it online here from a distance like this, I don't think I like this. I think it looks too painted. So I'm going to try and dab up some of that, fade it out a little. If you take water, clear water on your brush, and you just kind of scrubby a little bit, that'll get it out. Might pick it up a little bit. This little goofy one there looks kind of funny yet to me, so I'm just going to do a little bit like that, just so it has a little different feature. Maybe another one right there. And maybe another one right here. Don't know. I don't want to get too much blue on it, but I think that looks okay. I'm looking at my purple in the middle again. I run it sideways because it looks like it's pooling up here at this corner. So I'm running it down sideways, make it run towards the middle of my painting. Kind of get that line away from there. Oh, yeah, it's moving. I don't know if you can see that, but it's traveling. It's about right here now, and it's coming down. Keeps inching along. Come on, paint. Let's see. This line of purple on my particular painting looks fairly monochromatic. Doesn't look like it has a lot of crevices in until you get over on this part right here. I like the coloring on this part better than on this part. So I think what I might do is mix up, or maybe take some of that gray that I used on these little mountain things. I'm going to add some of that. Just right over the top of my purple, and let it flow around and soak in a little. See what it does. Maybe down here towards the base a little. Should give it a little bit of depth. If I'm getting another line, I may or may not want that. It might be all right. I could soak it up a little bit, kind of let it. Again, some more variation in the color, so it's not just one color. The hue is a little different, I think. Maybe tip it up again, see what it's doing. Okay. Any questions? Trying to see if there's anything else I might do to this. I might put a little variance in this line yet. For some reason, I still don't like my middle hill on this particular one. So I'm going to, this green I had mixed up that had some of the bright and some of the black in it. I'm gonna redo my line. I might get some blossoms and then I'm gonna have to fix them, but that's the way it's gonna be. Then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take a clean brush, I'm gonna dry it out. And I'm gonna go along the line, see how it's got this edge? It looks like I just brushed that edge in, which I did. I'm just gonna go like this and kind of smooth out that edge, kind of soften it a little bit and take that line away. So it doesn't look so stark. And that gives it a little more of, it looks like a field, like variation in color, and it flows a little differently. So I actually like that a little bit better. So that's one way to address a line that you don't like that looks too sharp. Okay, any questions? Debbie, anything you can think of?
Are you going to add any little black dots around the edges of the center of the sunflowers? Or
I certainly can. Let me check and
I
see
just
how.
didn't know, like on the ones up front. Can we
Uh-huh.
do more?
Like these bright ones here?
Yeah.
Yeah. And like this, I didn't draw it in very well, but actually this is two flowers here. So I could even do a light line to distinguish an top of a flower underneath a flower.
Oh, yeah.
To make it look like that. But sure, if we want to do that, if you can take a black, or even if you've got like a dark burnt umber, you could try that color. See how that looks.
Yeah, I tried black. It seemed awfully black.
If you try the burnt umber, I would start with that maybe,
Okay.
because it might be just, oh, mine's running. It's too much water on mine. So I'm dabbing that up, getting rid of some of the water, making it just more pigment. You can, I don't know if you can see. It's a little shiny because it's wet yet, but this has a few dots. You could put a few dots in there. I can do that on this one. But that might dry dark enough that, although, maybe with a little of that burnt umber with the black might give you a better color. See how this one is a little darker? I could actually go take and redo some of these a little bit with it. It's got a little burnt umber, like, so the brown color and the black color together.
Yeah, I think it does require
Yeah,
a
I
little
think
bit of
it's
black to
Right.
ground it.
Right. So you can touch just on the very, very tip of your brush. This one's kind of running together. You can kind of see it got kind of blobby. I'm going to leave that.
Do you see any definite leaves in yours? You know, green leaves for the sunflowers, or is it just really kind of an impressionistic kind of leaf?
This one, it's much more impressionistic than my first one. This is my first one, and I tried to do a few more leaves down underneath on some parts of it.
Okay.
So you could do it either way. I didn't draw them in, but I tried to paint them in a little more deliberately on the first one. So it looks a little bit different than the second one because the line, you know, I did a little more leaf shape down at the bottom and not necessarily the dots.
Gotcha.
So it's kind of, if you've got a preference of one or the other, you can always change it. If I don't like this area with the dots down here, I can always take my greenish with a little black in it and make more of leaf shapes. Or I could even take my bright green and make more leaf shapes right over the top of some of these darks, and it'll look fine. I might just try that. I'll show you. Some of these look kind of funny. I might dab some of them up a little bit. I don't know. But let's take this green that I have and mix it in with that gray a little bit. So I could just do a couple leafy shapes underneath there. And it'll give you more the impression that there's a leaf coming out from behind this flower. So if I do like one here, one there, there. So you definitely could change that look. Maybe put a little brighter green in there because I am up front. Make a couple leaf shapes. The other thing you could do to make these sunflowers stand out a little more is if you have either a pen or a very, very fine brush, you could draw a little more petal in a couple of these up front. I miss it. We've got plenty of time. So I'm going to take a really, really, really fine little baby brush. This number on this particular brush is 10/0. So it's just a real teeny, teeny little pencil brush. But if I dip that in my black or even my burnt umber black color, like here, and take my tissue and dab some of the wet off, I could take and do some lines and make my flower more pronounced. I could do a little petal shapes. Which make them more defined, stand out a little better. So you could do something like that, which actually would give your flowers kind of a little different definition. So this one. You don't have to do the whole line. You can just do part of the line and just give the impression of it being there. I think it does help the flowers take a little more shape. could just try the outline of this one, see what that does. Not even do more petals, just do kind of an outline. Or do parts of the line. Kind of shows you that this flower is on top of this flower. Put a little few leaves in that one, petals in that one. Do that on my guy in the back here. Both of them. This one. What you could do is you could almost make these columbine looking things. I don't know exactly what they're supposed to be, but you could make them look more like a bluebonnet if you wanted to do white dots on them. Make them stand out a little more. That's always a possibility.
They're actually related to the bluebonnet. They're lupines.
Oh, lupines, that's the name. I couldn't think of the
Yeah.
name.
But it's
They're
like,
all over.
yeah,
Go ahead.
they're a relative of it.
Yeah, they're all over Norway, lupines.
Oh, are they?
Yeah. Fields of them like this, actually. Up in the mountains there. There, so it gave them a little different look. My purple mountain is still drying back here, but you can kind of see the variation, like the little movement, like it's more rocky looking. So I kind of like that. Kind of like the crag lines on this mountain. I might have gotten close to the mountain on these things. I might have done a little darker pink. It doesn't show up much on the screen. When I'm looking at it here, it looks a little bit more contrast, but on the screen it might not. But I think I'm kind of liking the way it's turning out because it's different. Any other questions?
It looks like everybody's still painting, Jill.
Okay, no rush. There's still a good 15 minutes to go. I'm looking at my sunflowers, the center of my sunflowers. Let me see if you can. I'm not real happy like with this one or this one. Actually, a couple of these I'm not real happy with. So I'm gonna go in and maybe go more with my black that I did my lines with and my teeny little brush. I don't know how small you have. You might have just like I think the other size I have, that's the next smallest one of mine is like a 2 or a 4. those would work as well. You don't need to have one this teeny. I just happen to have it. But if you do your 2 and your 4, you can do this same thing with that. Just make sure it's pointed up, straight up and down, and you'll get more of the tip to make your little sunflower dots. Get a little more black in there with the burnt umber. I think they're looking a little better with more dots, so I'm going to continue that. Oop, got a little line, that's all right. This one in the background here, I'm going to dab up some of that so it's not quite as stark as the ones in the front, so it's not quite as bright and brilliant. Just kind of give the hint of having the speckled center.
Thanks for attending Watercolor. Check our next class is the second Tuesday in October, so sign up for that. Thanks for attending.